Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to OnFest 2013 Grand Finals with Kalu OP and Dark Passage. First game went to Kalu OP, probably the biggest upset we've seen so far this tournament. I'm Pulse, and I'm joined by Metas.
Hey, Pulsive Views, and I agree, especially when you consider that just yesterday, not even 24 hours ago, Dark Passage had claimed 2 victories over Kalu OP, but Kalu certainly living up to his name in the jungle with Evelyn, going, I believe it was like 9-1 at the end of that matchup, and it has basically forced the Evelyn ban here coming in from Dark Passage. They certainly respect that, and you can't really blame them.
Banned out Evelyn, banned out Zed. They realised that letting those through the cracks was probably not the best idea, considering that Kalu OP is so dominant with them. Shen comes out as a very generic banner. We'll see what comes out from Dark Passage. We'll leave out a couple more picks that we haven't seen so far in this tournament. Well, in fact, we saw earlier, but Renekton will be one of those. And seriously, these Eastern Europeans seem to absolutely hate Vi.
Wow, actually 3 targeted bans coming out. So it's a case of saying, what you just did, we don't like it. We don't want you to do it again. So there you go, smash in your face. Now come up with a new composition.
That's a massive curveball. Now they've got like a minute to entirely, completely become up with a new composition, as you just said, Metas, because they can't go with Zed, Evelyn, or Malphite. So will they go for something different? That was the first time we've really seen Kalu's OP come back so strong against like probably the best team, or what people assumed would be the strongest team in the tournament, Dark Passage. So we'll see if the new composition works, but it'll be something completely new.
Yeah, and I'd be right alongside anyone that assumed Dark Passage would have won this. I've already said in the previous cast in game number 1 that I thought Dark Passage were the certain winners of this entire tournament going into day number 1. They were so dominant, they dropped no games and they went right through. And yeah, as you said, Renekton was banned in the first game up against KOP. Zeka does play a very strong Renekton, and this time it's not been banned because they've completely got rid of that previous composition. So now that's allowing these bans that were coming in from last game to be picked up from Kalu OP. They're going to go Lee Sin, Renekton, and Caitlyn.
Okay, so we'll see if this works out. Lee Sin we saw coming in from Dark Passage, and it didn't work out all that well, but Kalu plays a very good Lee Sin, and Inksy, well, he's their mid laner, but the AD carry will be picking up Caitlyn. Could see a Zyra alongside that, but Zyra already picked away from Dark Passage, so they had to bring something else out. Corki, that's something we've seen banned out in many games metas. And they have a very bursty composition. Dark Passage also bringing out the Aatrox, so looking to be even more aggressive in the early game.
Yeah, I really like this composition a hell of a lot more from Dark Passage. Not that their first composition in game number 1 was poor, but I feel this definitely works into their kind of strong, comfortable situation a lot more. Because, you know, Zyra and Kennen together is so scary. Aatrox on top of that with the Dark Flight and all the damage that it'll do. And then Corki, who is definitely top tier right now of AD carries, if not the best in the game. So, very strong compositions coming out from them. But then looking at the flip side, Kalu OP's composition is pretty tasty as well here, Pulse. That's a lot of initiation, the ball delivery system from Renekton and with the Orianna, and then afterwards Sona locking everybody down, Lee Sin making the plays, and if Kalu plays even a fraction of how he did in game number 1, he's going to be very scary to face off against. Fizz as the final pick. I really like this comp coming in from DP.
They've both gone for teamfight comps,
Yeah.
and they're both strong in the early game, so this will probably be one of the fastest paced games I've seen in a while. If they play into what they should do, mid lane will be explosive, because Fizz will constantly try to be killing Orianna. Renekton and top lane with Kennen. Kennen is very aggressive, so is Renekton. It's very much a skill-based matchup. We've seen this a couple times today, metas. And in the bot lane, Corki, he likes to kill his lane opponent. So, and Aatrox, and also Lee Sin. So everyone wants to be aggressive in the first, like, 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, they do. And the other thing as well is, you know, we mentioned this in an US Challenger series that we casted, feels like about a week ago on our Pulse, when a lot of Thrashes and Corkis were coming out, and we were saying it's such a strong combination. But truth be told, Zyra Corki is as strong, if not stronger, because you get all of the same kind of CC if Grasping Roots lands, but also a lot of damage on top of that. One of the reasons why Zyra is such a good support is because she's got CC from level 1 if she picks Grasping Roots, and also doesn't need a great deal of AP to do lots of damage. So that bot lane's going to hurt.
It is indeed. Now moving on to the loading screen. So the early game is interesting. Do you think we'll have any lane swap-ups actually? Because Sona and Caitlyn are very pokey, very poke-centric, and Zyra and Corki also like to zone and then go for hard engagements. Like if Zyra lands a grasping roots into Corki's, full burst combo, it would be very interesting to see if they just go all out for the aggression, or they choose to play it more defensively, swap up some of these lanes, and try and shut down someone like that Fizz.
I feel if there is going to be a lane switch up, it's more than likely going to be initiated from Kalu OP for a couple reasons. One, Caitlyn Sona is terror to play against. It's a very fast pushing duo lane. It's very good at knocking down towers. And secondly, because Corki Sona, it's not a counter. I wouldn't say that Caitlyn Sona is a counter to Zyra and Corki, but what I would say is that Corki does suffer a tiny bit because Caitlyn's range is going to allow her to harass, plus the fact that a lot of Corki's burst damage and his strength is from fairly close range. On top of that, if Zyra does land the grasping roots on Sona, it's almost a certain death, especially levels 1 to 3 or so, because Sona is one of the squishiest champions in the game. So if there's a lane switch up, I would expect to see Caitlyn Sona go ahead and pick that one up because they want to push the tower down, and it's kind of risky if Zyra plays well.
Yeah, but at the same time, if she doesn't land that grasping roots, a lot like if Nami doesn't land the Aqua Prison, then nothing will happen, and Sena will win regardless. So it's a very skill-dependent matchup for Zyra to make the plays. Corki can't kind of instigate it, but at least for the first level 1, we will have another invade onto those respective red buffs.
We will, and I think, as you were saying before, completely correct. We can theory craft about, if Holy Thoth lands the grasping roots, it could spell doom for Sona. It's going to come down to confidence. Do Kalu OP feel like they can dodge the grasping roots? Do they feel they can get the upper hand? After that first game win, there's no reason why they wouldn't feel confident. But actually, Dark Passage have just walked over a ward, which is going to give vision to Kalu OP, and they're actually going to start to back away from their red buff. From the opposition's red buff, I should say. So both teams went in for a potential invade, and then they both decided not to.
Yeah, because Kalu's OP realized they have to back off just in case they try to check their own red buff, and then they also... they both thought the same thing at the same time, and they both backed off. So it looks like Aatrox will be starting on his red buff, and Lee Sin will be starting on his blue. And now a pause timer comes in. But they could potentially meet each other in the bot lane. And now it looks like we do have the swap up. Fizz going into the bot lane, and then Corki Zyra in the mid lane.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. I felt like it was going to be Caitlyn Sona would initiate the lane switch, but it's the opposite way around. So there's another way that we haven't really thought about this, though, Pulse, is it's not just about the duo lanes. It's about the single lanes as well. Does Renekton and Kennen feel comfortable in that 1 versus 1? Well, the answer would appear to be that Kennen does feel comfortable and Renekton doesn't, so they want to lane switch this one up. That being said, though, Fizz is going down to bot lane by the looks of things, and the duo lane's going mid. So we've got all kinds of lane switch ups around.
Yeah, so Fizz will be 1 versus 2, unless Sona decides to go into the mid lane with Orianna, because they've already seen him in the mid lane. But the problem is Fizz 1 versus 2 is probably one of the weaker 1 versus 2s I've seen for a while, and because he isn't running Flash, he's going with Barrier Ignite. That's a very all-in build. It's like, I want to kill you. But because they've instigated the swap up, I'm very confused. Like, it would make sense to send maybe a Kennen down bot lane, he can 1 versus 2 fairly efficiently, but then you'd be putting Fizz against Renekton, which again feels like a bad matchup. So, I'm not sure if Dark Passage necessarily needed to go for this swap up, but we'll see if it works out. It's very reliant on it working in the mid lane though.
It's a bit of a head scratcher for a couple of reasons. One is, as you say, it's instigated by Dark Passage, so they're putting Fizz in a 1 versus 2 against Caitlyn Sona. I mean, that's brutal. Fizz is a melee champion. Yes, he has a lot of maneuverability with the Playful Trickster and the Urchin Strike as well, but still, you don't really want to put your Fizz in a 1 versus 2 against them. That being said, though, this is preordained because you look at Fizz's opening items here, Crystalline Flask and Health Potions. I mean, he is ready to siege himself in. He is ready for the long winter there. He is going to constantly spam through his flask stacks and the health potions and be A-OK. Still, though, I'm a bit curious and a bit, confused at this.
Yeah, I could see Aatrox, that's why he's starting red, he'll go blue and then he'll try to help Fizz. Because with Ignite Barrier, they can go 2 versus 2 against Sena and Shim. Because they will probably, when Aatrox gets down there, he'll be level 3. Fizz will be level 2, maybe level 3 himself. And hopefully, Salna and Shim should be level 2 or 1 if they catch them at the right time. So they have that small window of opportunity where they could potentially win the 2 versus 2. But that would either have to be a lane gank because it's a 2-on-1 lane because Sona will be warding. So it's all down to Ryosta, I think, in the first like minute or so.
Yeah, well, Ryosta was the player that was having some issues, has reconnected though, so the unpause has came about. We'll be picking up his red, as you mentioned previously, and indeed it will be Fizz, and the instant re-rotate coming out. So the dual lanes are going to be featuring in mid, that's going to take Orianna down to bot lane, and for the second time today actually, me and Spud were casting a game previously where the dual lane went mid as well, and that was between Guru and Dark Passage, and to be fair to Dark Passage, they crushed the lane really, really hard.
Honestly, Metas, I felt like it would have worked out better for Kalu's OP. Yes, it would have been Orianna 1 versus 2, but Orianna would have done way better than Fizz in a 1 versus 2. And in the bot lane, Fizz has way more room for maneuverability in that he's at the bot lane, so he'll have the brushes, so he can use the brushes to his advantage. Orianna can't really do that as much unless she puts down the ward there, so Fizz will benefit more from being in the bot lane against Orianna.
Yeah, I fully agree with that statement, and yeah, I mean, Fizz seems to be okay. Maybe it's just mind games. It's this mental chess that we speak about so often in League of Legends, where you're trying to outmaneuver the opposition. Here comes Ryosta to bot. You nailed it. You called this one to be red-blue into the gank at bot lane, and that's what he's doing, but both junglers are down here. So, are they going to get the vision? Is the Sonic Wave Resonating Strike going to connect onto Ryosta? That's going to be Inksy jumping into the bush right now, and he's going down very quick. Darkflight goes in. This should be first blood with the red buff flashing in to secure that kill, and now turning onto Kalu. Remember the Bloodwell, Kalu. It's not looking too good for him. He's going to pick up one kill. Can he go one better, though? Kalu OP living up to his name will pick up the double kill. However, first blood was drawn from Ryosta.
It looks so bad when he whiffed the Sonic Wave, but he had the advantage of the minions, and I wish I could see how much damage those actually did to Fizz, because between auto attacks, he was getting chunked down. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Ignite comes out from Holy Froth, and the Phoenix actually more content just to kind of farm minions. Not sure if he could have all-ended, especially with Shim there, but he's going to return some damage. Sana actually throws out the Piltover, and great Valkyrie to dodge out the way of it. Reaction play.
Indeed, exactly. Took the words right out my mouth. Reactions there for Holy Phoenix, cat-like, really well played. And just going on to about this duo lane in mid, I'm not too sure. Like, I think Dark Passage is going to be happier as well, because obviously in mid lane, the difference between mid lane and bot lane, you only have one kind of angle to attack from. It's either going to be through the bushes or the river. Whereas in mid, it's kind of a circle of potential threats. And I feel that Aatrox coming in here for the ganks with the Dark Flight, on top of the grasping roots, his potential for successful ganks is far higher until Sona has Crescendo available. Yes, Lee Sin can jump in and get the Safeguard and also the Resonating Strike Sonic Wave combos, but the Dark Flight is available every few seconds. So that, for me, is going to definitely work into the hands of Dark Passage.
It's odd, Metas, because we're saying on paper it looks so good for Dark Passage, and yet they're still losing again. And we saw this in the first game. Grasping Roots lands onto 2, but Froth, he always seems to be going for the initiate, but it doesn't seem like Phoenix and Froth are reading from the same book. Meanwhile, Lee Sin finds himself Ryosta in the jungle, knowing he doesn't have the Bloodwell, so he can probably trade off against him. But despite all of this, Kalu is OP are still winning. It's mind-boggling.
It certainly is, but whether that will remain the case is yet to be seen right here. So how is Kalu going to approach with that double kill previously? Well, Sightstone instantly picked up, and I do like that. It's going to give a lot of vision, but also the sight ward jumps are going to be much more in contention as well. So maneuverability-wise, going to be very strong, but you can see that Holy Phoenix is definitely feeling quite, isolated, quite, very much not that comfortable right now. The Q lands, and that's going to be an instant Valkyrie coming out. And if I compare this performance from Holy Phoenix and his general mentality going into this lane compared to against Guru Gaming, where he was basically walking past his minions and forcing Caitlyn, because he was playing against Caitlyn now, which is being utilized from LT, and he was playing Ezreal, a similar kind of AD carry to Corki in the aspect of the Triforce. He was pushing so aggressive, Pulse. This time, much more respect being shown.
Kalu OP seems to have Dark Passage on the back foot, because look at the item builds. There's 6 Doran's Blades coming out from Dark Passage. That's a sign of realizing that this game isn't going well, and they need instant power, and they need it now, because if they don't, then they'll carry on falling behind. And in the mid lane, they aggress onto Shim, but Kalu is also there for the counter guide. Doesn't connect the Q onto Holy Phoenix. Wouldn't have mattered either way with Valkyrie being there, but even so, they don't seem to be doing everything at the right times. Kalu OP is always in the right place at the right time.
The Holy Phoenix is certainly taking the daring pot out, the daring bombardier from Corki. He's playing very much, you know, kind of hanging himself out there. The Q did not land from Kalu, who is now about to bump head-to-head with Ryosta any second now. Zyra around from the side as well, but this is leaving Corki in a 1 versus 2, so he's kind of being zoned backwards from Sona and also Caitlyn. Here comes Kennen from the top as well. Instant jump, ward jump through the wall, and that's exactly the reason you pick up the Sightstone. And when you play aggressive with it, you know that unless everybody throws the kitchen sink at you, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and there's no real way to pin down a Lee Sin, and he committed a lot of time. Jumps over the wall, looks for the steal. He gets it onto Ryosta. He's now 1 versus 2. He Qs to Holy Froth, picks up the kill with Dragon's Rage. Meanwhile, Phoenix looks to shut him down. He gets that shut down, and Zyra throws up her passive towards the Wraith. So the 1-for-1 trade, and that's actually Corki picking up the red buff. So that might have backfired.
It definitely backfired, because that's also a shutdown as well, Pulse. He was 3-0, so yes, you killed the support and you stole red buff, fair enough, but in doing so you lost your own life and you gave that red buff to Corki. Bot lane Naru, 1 versus 1 against Inxie. He's popped off the barrier. Can he make some big plays right now? Inxie will be falling down, but my god, that was a lot closer than I was expecting. And will manage to run back to his own tower. But just going back onto the previous point, Holy Phoenix was having a bit of a rough lane. Now he's got the shutdown gold and the red buff. He should be winning this lane now. Look at the damage that he's doing on Sena. And when he goes back to spawn, he's got 1.8k gold to spend, so he's going to have a phage.
It almost feels like that was the confidence he needed to be aggressive. I felt like he could have done that before, even without the kill and the red buff, but it's kind of given them the confidence to do so. I mean, on the top lane, they're bumping heads, but slicing Maelstrom and Dominus, something we've seen time and time again in the top lane matchup, that neither party wants to initiate, because Dominus makes him deceptively tanky. His trading potential makes him almost impossible to kill, very similar to Fury of the Sands. And then Ken at the same time, you can't initiate on him because he'll lock you down twice under turret. So it's risky, and now both of them pop up their own respective ultimates. And Farfan is backing on off, jumps under his turret. Zika cannot follow up as of because of the aforementioned reasons, and now it kind of fizzles out.
It certainly does, and there's a lot of harassment put down as you were casting the top fight there, Pulse, on the blue buff, and actually nobody ended up going for it. It was, again, that flirtatious affair between the two teams. Darkflight goes about from Ryosta just to get himself out of dodge. As I said before, Phage would be locked in, and the second Doran's Blade plus Boots of Speed with that red buff, and this is one of the power spikes that Corki gets with that Phage. Yes, he's a strong AD, but he really starts to spike up once that Triforce is starting to get picked up from him. So coming back into this lane, Caitlyn's going to be on the back foot, does have a BF sword, but look at how tanky Corki actually is, Pulse. 2 Doran's Blade and the Phage. He's up to 1.4k HP nearly. Meanwhile, Kalu is going around on blue buff, missing the Q right there, so the cocoon, I've said that again, the coconut, for some reason that's impossible for me to say it properly, does go slightly awry.
Yeah, it doesn't quite connect, but he has up once again, and he has the ward jump available to him. Follows up, will he get the steal? In fact, goes to Ryosta, but now with Chum the Waters coming across, will lock him up. Darkflight comes down, looks for the more auto attacks, picks up 1, moves on to Inxie. Can they pick up the second? Holy Phoenix, he's a massive brawler, picks up 2. And now jumps over the wall. Ryosta follows up and will be dropped into his Bloodwell passive as Crescendo came down. Holy Phoenix still following after. Darkflight comes out. Sena and Shim. Will they get picked up? The answer is no, but they can easily transition into Dragon. And now Dark Passage are picking up the pace.
They are, and I feel a lot of the reason they're picking up the pace is because Kalu OP are dropping the ball. There's no reason to go for that blue buff. There's no reason to throw away a lead here and go well and truly behind. Caitlyn come around from the side. Here comes the Valkyrie, though, very nearly stealing away that Dragon with the Piltover Peacemaker. Fizz will be picking that one up. Here comes the Darkflight, and Caitlyn will be dropping. So not just a Dragon, but a kill on top of that. And suddenly the gold advantage, 1.7k in the hands of Dark Passage. And I'll go back to reiterate a point I made before. Kalu had a great game number 1. His confidence must have been sky high, but that's 2 poor plays in a row now, which has taken their team from being ahead to well and truly behind. Now, you could argue that that's kind of what Lee Sin needs to do, but the plays have just not been working out.
Yeah, he is looking for another gank top lane. He finds himself Fabulous. Again, whiffs the Sonic Wave, but he follows up. Slicing Maelstrom comes in. Zika into the Dominus, still following up with the damage, and Slicing Maelstrom is no longer a tool. He's slowly chunking him down. The Dominus damage is coming out. Another missed Q will result in him not picking up a kill. And meanwhile, in the mid lane, more damage comes onto Shim. But I fully agree with you, Metas, and case in point, that he's really dropping the ball.
This reminds me a lot of the game that we casted before with Guru as well, Guru Gaming. In fact, I thought because in the mid lane and at the top lane is action as well. Fab's been caught out here. Here comes the tower damage, and very nice play from Zeka, realizing he would not have died from that second tower shot, and just bought Kalu some extra time. So Fab will be dropping there. Meanwhile, in mid, Zane has been forced back. But yeah, it's just a case of a kind of Crow Assassin from Guru Gaming was playing Elise, and he kept missing cocoons in these really good gank positions. So he was moving himself in, he was outplaying and outreading the situation, but then he was missing the really important skill shot. And I feel Kalu's kind of in that same ballpark right now. Yes, they finally got their man and the tower now at top lane, but it's looking a bit sketchy.
It's sloppy right now from Kalu OP. From a very confident start, they're looking very inconsistent, and they had the momentum. They could have followed that through into the mid and late game, but now that Dark Passage have kind of built up some speed, it's a lot more even. I wouldn't say momentum has gone to either one of these teams, but I would say that when it comes into trades, it's going to be a lot more even. Crescendo comes across onto Froth, and now the slice comes through. I don't think he got the dice, and it didn't connect onto a minion, but the flash into Ruthless Predator. Call the make's not going to be enough. It doesn't quite connect as the flash came down from Froth. Neither will the ignite, so 0 for 0 as Riosta comes round the side. They could go for this initiation. Corki's still fairly tanky. Big ultimates are down, but Zika Dominus up very shortly.
I don't think Holy Phoenix is too interested, but does need to get out of dodge right now because Sight Ward jump coming out from Kalu, and here comes Riosta from the side. Actually, meanwhile, a bot as well while you were talking there, Pauls. Inksy flashed away from the playful Trickster to survive there, to save his life. So, global action, top lane, mid lane, bot lane, it's all happening. As you said before, fireworks.
Yeah, so 5 to 5, and only 400 gold in it, 2 tower advantage, but by all odds you feel that Kalu's OP should be slightly ahead. Lands the Q onto Aatrox, maybe not the person he exactly wanted it on. Holy Phoenix on about 40% HP, but Fabulous does have his ultimate. I'm not sure if they want to necessarily go for the Zai, but especially with Bloodwell off cooldown, or on cooldown I should say, it will be in a minute, in fact a couple seconds, so maybe they could go for it now.
It's certainly a possibility, and Renekton is coming around from the side. Both of the solo laners of bot are still there. It is going to be a farming frenzy. Renekton walks in, gets chunked down for a fair bit of his health. In fact, half of it's gone, more than half make that. Slicing Maelstrom from the Dark Flight as well, and Kalu gets absolutely decimated alongside Renekton. I do not understand that play at all. They're going to lose their AD carry and potentially their support off the back of this, and maybe even a tower. It's gone horribly wrong there for Kalu OP, and it's a case of just going too aggressive. The Dominus wasn't even used.
And they're getting punished for the over-aggression and those mistakes, and Dark Passage are so perfect at doing so. Their composition, or in fact just them as players, they can easily see a mistake when it's coming, and they will punish you as hard as they can. It doesn't even come down to being like necessarily a good team. It's just by themselves as players. Even if they were like, you know, sitting in solo queue, it would be like, that person has made a mistake. Now we're gonna go all in, and they all see it. A call doesn't need to be made because it's all based off reaction. It's just mechanical errors from Kalu's OP.
That's completely it. It's overextending and kind of just dropping the ball. They got the early advantage again, and they've just thrown it away. It's completely been thrown away. Yes, they're only about 3,000 gold behind, and they're actually a tower up. But these characters are starting to get very dangerous. Zeka's actually going really aggressive. Ace of the Hull comes out. Will be popping off the Bloodwell. Meanwhile, Holy Phoenix gets called out from the Shockwave. Will Riosta be falling? Got a Dominus up Crocodile. That is an outback Aussie, really dangerous and chasing you down. And actually has been stunned a couple times and slowed as well. And again, this is backfiring. Holy Phoenix in the front lines will be dropping. Stranglethorns as well. And here comes the cavalry. Naru is doing so much damage. Nice Dragon's Rage though. However, Crocodile is going to sacrifice himself for the betterment of the rest of his team, who seem to be getting away with that dissonance and also the speed up from the Song of Celerity, so they should be just fine. But again, it's a case that Kalu OP start the fight pretty well and then just hang around for too long.
they're not keeping it together, and I would say that their team fight, at least now, is very slightly better than Dark Passages, in that they're still, they still have the early game power spike, but as soon as we get to like later mid game, kind of a 20-minute region to 25 minutes and onwards, then Dark Passage are only going to get stronger. Like Fabulous with Slicing Maelstrom, Rios is doing very well for himself in the jungle, so he's going to be a damage threat regardless, and then he can just build tank after that Blade of the Ruin King. He might even go for 2, because he has the passive, which is essentially a free Guardian Angel. Naru, one of those champions, Fizz, we see that can, even if they fall massively behind in the early game, they can still be the playmaker late game. I think the classic example would be like Charu in the Challenger series that we saw, going like 1-10, and then he went like 12-10 by the end of the game, and he was murdering people. So, in terms of scaling, I have to give it to Dark Passage.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. Charu, a perfect example. And also, just previously today, Naru was playing Ezreal mid and went 0 for 4 in lane and ended up on 11 for 4. So, as if to just prove your point even further, he's the kind of player that, yes, he can have a poor laning phase, but he'll bounce back. If you give him opportunities, he'll take them.
Yeah, and now Dark Passage, they don't need necessarily to do anything. They can just sit back and wait for Kalu's OP to make another play, because that seems to be their kind of playstyle. They instigate the fights, and then Dark Passage outplay them and win the fight, and then they go for an objective, and that's kind of just how they need to play the game. Kalu OP, again, they have to be on the offensive, because if they're not, then they'll just ground down, and like when we do get into that late game, they'll lose regardless. So now with the Renekton coming in, the Stranglethorn comes up, locks up 3. Meanwhile, Naru picks up 1 in the backside, takes out their AD carry. Phoenix, meanwhile, along with Froth, off to the side, but they're still chasing down the back line. Now Riosta comes in with Dark Flight. He picks up 1 with the Massacre. Still following on to Inksy. Renekton and the front line is still there, but do they have anything behind them? Naru drops, and the huge Slicing Maelstrom knocks him over the wall with Dragon's Rage. Now the follow-up from Phoenix should be enough. The Wood Jumps comes out, but the big one, the big rocket, picks him up. That's a 4 for 2.
I have to say that Dragon's Rage actually killed Renekton. I think he's like, oh, cheers, mate, thanks for that, because he Dragon's Raged in Inks, he's been caught with his pants down. He Dragon's Raged a Slicing Maelstrom, upped Kennen through the wall onto Renekton, who was trying to escape. So that was a moment of, oh dear, what have I just done? Before that though, I have to say, without being too harsh, that was a horrific team fight for Kalu's OP. I mean, they should be doing much better there. Their AD carry, I'm not sure if you caught that, Pulse, but got completely assassinated from Fizz, and nobody was close to him. Like, nobody. So Fizz got a free kill while they were trying to tower dive after Zyra. It just doesn't make sense. Like, either go for kills or secure objectives. You can't do both at the same time.
It really feels like Kalu as OP is a team that can go on tilt, and go on tilt very hard, because we saw them do so well, but as soon as they lost a single team fight, they just went downhill. Even though they were ahead in the game in terms of gold, in terms of how strong they were with their characters, they just started making bad calls. They made bad errors in terms of positioning, and now it's sort of going to the stage where it's snowballing out of control from Dark Passage, and they will take everything from you. Like, give them an inch and they'll take a mile, that classic phrase, and it's very relevant from Dark Passage. We saw this yesterday from them as well. So they're either going to have to pull it together and just realize that they need to go for the right decisions, or they just carry on losing.
Yeah, I feel that Kalu up here are a very momentum-based side. As you say, if they start to go behind, they'll let the occasion get to them, maybe push the self-destruct button somewhat, and then they'll just go further and further behind. And it does look to be starting to snowball out of control. 3-2 towers, that's not too bad, but the goal difference is pretty significant at 20 minutes through the game, and these last couple fights have not been going well. It's like they have no communication. AD carry's doing one thing, while their front line's doing an entirely different thing. Like I say, especially at 20 minutes through the game, you can't be greedy, you can't go for kills and objectives, because towers are going to hurt you, and as you mentioned previously, now Fizz, even though had quite a weak start of the game, has now got Lich Bane. He is going to be crushing you. Lich Bane is such an important item for him. Once he gets like a Zoni's Hourglass or a needlessly large rod even, he's going to absolutely decimate pretty much anybody.
Indeed, and as soon as he gets to the point in the game where they can tower dive, and not feel the pinch, but huge Oriana ultimate comes across along with the crescendo. Stranglethorns locks at 4, and actually that's enough to push them backwards. They haven't even picked up a kill. Such a good Stranglethorns. That could have been disastrous from Dark Passage.
I can't state enough how good that shockwave was, but how good the retort was as well from Zyra. That was like 2 perfect ults from both teams, just cancelling one another out. The shockwave was absolutely magnificent. But if the Stranglethorns hadn't have landed, they would have been able to capitalize after the shockwave, and it would have been 3 or 4 kills without any, retaliation. But here comes Corki from the side. Dragon's Rage through will knock both of his teammates in the air, and a nice Dragon's Rage from Kalu.
And that's why we say Stranglethorns is one of the best counter-initiation abilities in the game, as Nara goes huge, lands his ultimate on to 3 people, and gets out of the ace in the hole. But even so, that was a very aggressive play, but now Darkflight comes across as 2 versus 5, drops into the Bloodwell passive, only getting too ballsy, Froth from the backside, and now Phoenix has been exhausted. Will Lee Sin choose to follow up? He's very low HP, and the rest of his team, Nanzika, the point of contention, as Phoenix follows up with the damage. The minions will block out the missile barrage, and Froth takes the Q to the face for his ally. But they will back off, distance will get them out of dodge, but even so, these are very, very close.
Yeah, I would say it looks ballsy, but then when you think about, the kind of characters that they have, Aatrox had his Bloodwell up, and also Holy Phoenix has got a Triforce and a BF sword. It was a 2 versus 5, but they were quite weak. And they were quite weak because of Naru's over-aggression there, with the Chum the Waters and all the damage he put down on Caitlyn. So it was a case that they thought, oh, it's 2 versus 5, we should win this fight. But actually, guys, we're pretty low on HP. We should probably back off. And really, Dark Passage, you're going for the Baron. Okay, this could backfire horribly. They're taking it down pretty quickly, but at what cost right now? Kalu's coming in. Oh, the Chum the Waters has landed, instantly safeguarding to that ward. Really smart reactionary play. However, he's isolating himself away from the rest of his team. They've got their pick. 34-second death timer. So that kind of over-aggressive Baron call paying out dividends for them, and they're just going to go and rinse and repeat.
They've choked them so hard of vision that Kalu had to check anyway, and if he did, then he dies, and if he doesn't, then they take Baron. And that's it. Because they've lost the jungler, they have to back off, they can't even contest it, and they take a consolation prize in the form of Dragon. Fizz is actually heading down, I'm not sure if he'll catch up in time, but it's not good.
It certainly isn't. Kalu are trying to take down the Drake. It looks like they're going to be able to do that, as Dragon will be falling there. 90 caliber net through the wall, and they will manage to get away. So a minor consolation, but that's a full Baroned up team they're against right now. Dark Passage have nearly a 10,000 gold advantage. Bloodthirst has been finished off on Corki, plus a pickaxe. So more than likely, Last Whisper will be the next item that Corki, that Holy Phoenix will go for. And if it wasn't bad enough before Pulse, it's just got a whole lot worse.
Yeah, it's just Kalu is making very curious plays. He could have gone for that, but he could have gone from a different angle, and by losing their jungler, it meant there's like no steal attempt. So it's just Dark Passage taking advantage after advantage, and it's kind of that slow burn game where they just constantly take small victories, and eventually they'll get to the stage where no matter what Kalu's OP do, they'll always lose the team fights, and it's gradually getting to that stage in the game. And can they stop the flow? It doesn't look like it. Momentum is very quickly being built up by Dark Passage, and they're pushing down the middle turret. Doesn't look like it's going to stop.
It's certainly not, and with 6 towers picked up now, indicates that all the outer towers have been destroyed. So this constriction carries on. Now Kalu only have the sanctuary of their own base to fall back to, and the ward coverage is just, just look around blue buff. That's 5 wards right next to each other. Couple wards going down the bottom jungle as well. So all your base are belong to us is what Dark Passage is saying. All of your buffs are our buffs now. Yeah,
so they're slowly constricting them, and can they tower dive just yet? Probably not, but they can pick someone out in the form of Inksy if they go all in on him. He's dropped to a 50% HP, and now they just need to slowly seize the turret. Don't need to go for an engagement, they have better poke, and they have pretty good siege as well, so they just need to slowly chunk away at it, and Kalu OP just have to go for an engagement or just concede their base.
It looks like it's going to be the latter of those 2 options. Darkflight goes in here, and the Blade of Torment, but the inhib is already below 50% hit points. It is going to be falling. Beautiful shockwave and crescendo on top of one another, absolutely decimating. Holy Phoenix is being forced back here from the Dominist up. Renekton, it's such a good fight, but it's backfiring. Beautiful shockwave, beautiful crescendo, but still they lose 4 players, and now Kalu is all that remains, and that goes to show just how strong Dark Passage are. They honestly couldn't have asked for a much better engage.
It feels like Kalu himself is making plays for his team, and then at the same time makes plays for the enemy team. He kicked Kennen into Caitlyn, and then she died, as having a Kennen on top of you generally happens. So, I don't know, Messers. It's Kalu, as long as he can direct his plays towards the enemy, they're probably going to be good, but as soon as he starts team killing, then it's kind of GG.
He's like the counter playmaker.
Yeah.
It's not really someone you want on your team. And that won't be the first time he's done it then. Because, as I said previously, Dragon's Rage, the Slicing Maelstrom, if I can get my words out properly, Kennen, on Zika, on Renekton, and it actually killed him. So, yeah, that's not the greatest of things. That's not why you pick Lee Sin. Regardless, though, Pulse, much more dominant performance from Dark Passage, and that's going to take it into that all-important third game deciding matchup for this grand finals.
Absolutely. So we'll be back very soon, guys, with Kalu's OP and Dark Passage, seeing if Kalu OP can replicate what they did in the first game, or Dark Passage showing that they are the most dominant and consistent team. We'll be back soon.